Good day, everybody. It's Andrew here, and welcome back to my channel. Today we have an update from Bernie Sanders, who is fighting to include extra stimulus checks for seniors in this next stimulus package. He wants to include stimulus checks for those who are on Social Security, SSI, and SSDI as well. Now, in this video, he's calling out the hypocrisy of spending so much money on the military, so much money on other programs, but not spending money on seniors, on extra stimulus checks, on expanding Medicare, lowering prescription drug costs, and providing more affordable housing for seniors, those who are retired, SSI, and SSDI as well. So he took the Senate floor discussing all of these issues and the hypocrisy of spending on these other programs, but not willing to take care of seniors after President Biden and Democrats promised to take care of seniors on the campaign trail. Now, guys, the purpose of this channel is to be a voice for seniors and be a voice for those who are disabled, so this is why we're sharing this video. In a previous video, we shared a short clip. This is going to be the entire thing. Bernie Sanders takes the floor, urging Congress to expand Medicare, expand Social Security, approve more stimulus checks, and take care of seniors in this country, folks. So do me a quick favor. Hit like, hit subscribe, and share this video with anybody who you think might find this helpful. The more we share this content, the louder our voice gets, and the harder it gets for Congress to ignore us. So let's take a look, see what Bernie Sanders had to say. Listen to the whole thing, folks. He drops a lot of important points here. So let's listen to Bernie Sanders and let me know your thoughts in the comments below.
Madam President, if there was ever a moment in modern American history when we need to fundamentally review our national priorities, now is that moment. Day after day, here on the floor of the Senate and back in their states, many of my colleagues talk to the American people about how deeply concerned they are about the deficit and the national debt. They tell us that we just don't have enough money to expand Medicare, to cover dental care for seniors, to cover hearing aids, to cover eyeglasses. We just don't have enough money to do what every other major country on earth does, and that is guaranteed paid family and medical leave. At a time when hundreds of thousands of bright young people are unable to afford a higher education and millions are struggling with student debt, my colleagues tell us that we just don't have enough money to provide 2 years of free tuition at community colleges. When we have over 500,000 Americans sleeping out on the streets, including a few blocks away from the nation's capital, we just don't have enough money to build the low-income and affordable housing this country needs. And at a time when the scientists are telling us that we face an existential threat in terms of climate change, we are told that we just don't have enough money to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel and create a planet that will be healthy and habitable for our kids and future generations. Just don't have enough money. Yet today, the U.S. Senate will begin consideration of an annual defense budget that costs $778 billion. $778 billion for 1 year. And that is $37 billion more than President Trump's last defense budget, and $25 billion more than what President Biden requested. And by the way, all of this money is going to an agency, the Department of Defense, that continues to have massive cost overruns year after year, wasting enormous amounts of money, and is the only major governmental agency in the federal government not to successfully complete an independent audit. Now, isn't it remarkable how even as we end the longest war in our nation's history, the war in Afghanistan, concerns about the deficit and the national debt seem to melt away under the influence of the military-industrial complex. People sleeping out on the street, people dying because they don't have any health care, kids unable to get the early childhood education they need, not a problem. Can't afford to pay for those things. But somehow when it comes to the defense budget and the needs of the military-industrial complex, we just cannot give them enough money. There is also a $10 billion handout to Jeff Bezos, one of the wealthiest people in our country, for space exploration. Combining these two pieces of legislation would push the price tag of the defense bill to over $1 trillion for 1 year. And I want people to remember that, because when we talk about Build Back Better, you talk about a 10-year bill. This is 1 year. Meanwhile, while there is limited discussion about the defense bill or corporate welfare in the competition bill, Congress has spent month after month discussing the Build Back Better Act, which on an annual basis costs far less than the Pentagon budget, and discussing whether or not we can afford to protect the working families of our country whose needs have been ignored decade after decade, who in many cases are living paycheck to paycheck, can't afford housing, can't afford prescription drugs, can't afford to send their kids to college. We can't address their needs. No. Because we're too busy worrying about throwing money at the Pentagon and large profitable corporations. Madam President, if there was ever a moment in modern American history when we need to fundamentally review our national priorities, now is that moment. Whether it is transforming our energy system away from fossil fuels, whether it's guaranteeing paid family and medical leave, whether it's providing health care to all of our people as a human right, as virtually every other major country does, whether it is taking on the greed of the pharmaceutical industry, which charges us by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs, whether it is addressing our crisis in affordable housing or providing child care and pre-K to the little kids. Now is the time to reassess our priorities. Now is the time to fight for real change. But instead of addressing these major issues that impact the lives of working families all across this country and that the working class of this country desperately wants, Congress comes together, Democrats and Republicans, with minimal debate to support an exploding Pentagon budget, which is now higher than the next 13 nations combined and represents more than half of our discretionary spending. Madam President, after adjusting for inflation, we are now spending more on the military than we did during the height of the Cold War or during the wars in Vietnam or Korea. And I would like to reiterate, this is after the war in Afghanistan has ended. This pandemic has taught us anything, a pandemic which has cost us now almost 700,000 lives, it is that national security means more than just building bombs or missiles or jet fighters or tanks or submarines or nuclear warheads and other weapons of mass destruction. National security also means doing everything that we can to protect the lives of ordinary Americans, many of whom have been abandoned by their government for decades. These are people right now who are struggling to put food on the table, people who are now experiencing a lower life expectancy than was the case in the past. And these are people who, in many instances, when they get sick, can't even afford to go to a doctor. Madam, throwing more money into the Pentagon than it needs at a time when working families all across this country are struggling to put food on the table for their kids, and when 140 million Americans can't afford the basic necessities of life without going into debt. In 1967, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. warned us that, and I quote, "A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death," end quote. Dr. King was right.